Hi, I'm Annie Botticelli, and today I want to talk about peace. Why we don't have it in ourselves and in our relationships and in the world, and how we can create it. I always explain all of the spiritual principles that I talk about through the lens of the holographic universe. A hologram is a holographic way of looking at the world, which I believe we are in a holographic reality, is showing us that we have little versions of everything within each little version of everything else. So for instance, DNA is the blueprint for the body, the person. And if you break down the person into their smallest part, which is down into the cells and down into the DNA, the blueprint for the bigger person is there. So the DNA is a little hologram of the person. And I believe that we can, and it's prudent to extend that out into everything that we interface with in life. So our inside, then, our wiring, our tendencies, our patterns are going to show up in our relationships and in our experience of the world. So there's so much energy going into trying to create peace in the world. And there's a lot of warring and fighting in trying to create peace in the world. And we're not going to be able to create peace in the world until enough people have created peace within themselves. And this is the same for creating things in government, creating sustainability, sustainable sources of energy, etc. Anything that we are struggling to create on a global level is because we have not mastered that energy within ourselves. And that's why whenever someone else starts to understand this and awakens to the truth that we can shift things in our own personal experience and our global experience by shifting our inner space. This is what Mahatma Gandhi taught. All of the spiritual teachers knew this, and their words, their ways were based on this holographic understanding. So when Gandhi would say, we have to be the change we want to see in the world, he was meaning literally that we have to be it. We have to shift our internal energy, our programs, our challenges. We have to master ourself. We have to create peace inside before we can expect to see that outside. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have different roles to play in outer society as part of our movement towards this greater vision. But simultaneously, if we're not also addressing the inner, then we're not going to be able to create it, because the hologram is going to be what it is. So the story of faith versus fear. This is the epic battle that has been fought since the beginning of recorded history and has gone on in every period of time, in everyone's life experience to some degree, that we've seen happen with our ancestry, with this lifetime, this story of faith versus fear. And really what everyone is fighting about in the world is faith versus fear. You know, if someone has a faith or beliefs about something, and then they become afraid because their faith isn't grounded in the transcendence of the faith and fear polarity. This faith and fear polarity is what keeps us swinging back and forth like a pendulum with our emotions and our experience, back and forth, back and forth. So we have to find the unity above all of it and transcend into, transcendence. That's what transcending these life experiences while still in the body, I believe, is the purpose of our conscious evolution. So when you can win your battle with faith and fear, then your life takes on a whole new magical synchronistic level. And you'll see that you're not dealing with that same old thing that you had always been dealing with. Or maybe it's showing up, but less so. So in order to win the battle between faith and fear, we have to look at the energies within us, where they're coming from. Our heart rules faith, and our head rules fear. The ego is the steward of the fear story. And so I'm not saying that we eradicate the ego and we eradicate fear, because we need an ego while we're in form. We can't just get rid of the ego. But what we can do is dismantle its domination on our lives and strengthen the heart, so that the heart now has increasing weight in our lives and our creations and our decision making and our experiences and our creations. So anything that you can do that dismantles an overblown ego, and I don't mean this just like how we often think of egos as being someone being conceited or very full of themselves in a way that's not positive, that goes beyond self-esteem, that's just putting other people down. That's not what I mean. What I mean is the ego is this analytical, critical, overseeing energy that is like the devil on our shoulder, we might call it. So as soon as we feel hopeful about something, or as soon as something starts to shift nicely for us, then that little devil or the ego starts to say, it's not going to last. You're just going to have, this is going to be pulled out from under you. You can't trust it. And then that happens. So it's not just easy enough to say, okay, well, I'm just going to have faith and that's it. It's really more complicated than that, because if you're consciously having faith and saying, well, I'm going to ignore the patterns and ignore everything and just have complete faith without any inner work, then those internal programs that are 80 to 90% of your being will come out and do exactly what the ego has whispered it will do, and pull the wool out from under you again. So having faith is one thing, but coupling having faith with dismantling the ego's control over you and strengthening your heart, it has to happen at the same time. There's an amazing book. It's one of my favorite books for working with clearing up ego programs. It's called The Marriage of Spirit by Leslie Temple Thurston with Brad Laughlin. And this book has actual writing exercises that you can use as part of your answer to the question, okay, well, that makes sense to me. I need to dismantle the ego. I need to live more in faith. That's what I want to do. How do I do that? The answer to how do I do that is get that book. And you can start reading it, but then put a bookmark in after several pages and just get right to section 2 and start working on the writing exercises. This does actually take some work. You've got to do a lot of this yourself. It doesn't mean you can't get support from other people or that different practices or practitioners can't be assistive, but ultimately we came into this experience alone. We're going to leave this experience alone in many ways, and we have to do this ourselves. Our soul's consciousness, our consciousness has to do this work ourselves, a bulk of it. So this book is just amazing at it's just one of the best things I've found, where you can untie the loops of consciousness that keep you reflecting out disjointed and awkwardness in your experience as the norm, and can start to shift the balance of power within yourself from fear to faith. So there are some other ways that we can assist with the process of faith and fear, and one is what we take into our bodies. When you take something in your body, you experience the energy of that thing and it reflects out into your life. And this is very easily seen with the energy of fear when we eat meat. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating that everyone become a vegetarian, because even though I'd love for that to happen, I do believe, and I have found through my own spiritual practices, that there are some people that do need to intake meat as part of their most healthy, vibrant experience on this earth plane. But the consciousness that goes into the life and death of the animal is critical. So tune into this. I personally have had quite a journey with this myself, and I had lots of panic attacks in my earlier time in my life, and it was related to a lot of different things. But even as I started to do a lot of this ego clearing work, I noticed that I was still having panic attacks. And during a meditation one time, it became very clear that this is what I just said, right? You are what you eat. You experience what you eat. And maybe it's better said, not you are what you eat, but you experience what you eat. And the energy that gets put into that becomes part of your holographic reflection out into the external that becomes the experiences of your life. So I noticed that when I would eat beef, that I would have a panic attack within 24 to 48 hours. And I didn't really notice this because I had eaten it so regularly that I was just kind of regularly having being panic stricken. But when I got away from it, I noticed that when I reintroduced it, I would have the fear that the animal experienced became my own, projected out into an experience in my life, which passed, but I still experienced it. And so habitually eating the beef, I habitually experienced the panic. So I have seen a difference. I don't eat beef now, except as an experiment as part of what I'm learning with the spiritual process. So I don't have it in my diet. But when I have eaten grass-fed beef that comes from grass-fed cattle, that has been meticulously cared for and has been killed in the most humane way, that the whole life to death process is given great reverence and consciousness, that there's a huge difference in the amount of fear that it is in the meat. So you can experiment with this for yourself, knowing this, I really, that's why I don't eat beef myself, but I am a person that when I don't eat any animal protein at all, I get really sick and skinny, and I have not been able to get around this, anything that I've tried. So I'm just putting this out there because this is so relevant to the faith and fear topic. You've got to pay attention to how the food you're eating makes you feel and what it's creating in your life. Another big topic here with the food is sugar. Sugar totally embodies the codependent dysfunction that humanity is plagued with. The up and down, the sugar spike and then sugar drop, and then the living sugar spike to sugar drop that we do creates this in life. I do believe it is either at the source of or a contributing factor to or an exacerbator of all mental problems or diagnosis. Many people who are diagnosed as the different diagnoses that people have, bipolar, depressed, etc., some of those people are dramatically improved in their diagnosis, and some people, the diagnosis goes away altogether, by shifting how they manage their blood sugar. Because once your blood sugar starts to drop, you switch into fear and panic, and you make bad food choices, which beget more fear and panic. So really, essentially what I'm saying is part of being able to maintain your faith and equanimity in this life experience is very much directly related to balancing your blood sugar, keeping your blood sugar balanced. So explore this. There's so many ways that you can positively affect your blood sugar, and you can do searches on this, how to balance your blood sugar. But one of the best ways to balance your blood sugar is to not eat high sugar things that spike your blood sugar and then drop it down. That's just one of the best ways to do it. And also a culprit in this is not just straight up sugar or sweeteners. It's also carbohydrates that break down into sugar that cause that sugar spike. Carby foods, lots of different breads, and again, you have to research this because there are different things, like for instance, Paleolithic diet-based coconut and almond flour bread doesn't have that experience. You don't have that experience with that. So we can't just say, stop eating bread and your problems will be solved. It's not that simple. It's what I'm calling out for is an awareness of what you put in your body and how it affects your faith and fear. This is just a constant, nonstop thing. Something else that affects your faith and fear is watching TV and listening to the radio and looking at magazines that are focusing on making you feel crappy about yourself, basically. So people who are selling products based on your insecurities, and encouraging the insecurities through the ad, all of these things are putting fear into your space, and fear that comes into your being gets projected out as fear in your experience. So one of the best things you can do is get rid of your TV, or get rid of your cable, or get rid of your normal TV that has commercials, and just watch things where you can control what you're watching. They don't call it TV programs or television programming. They don't call it programming for nothing. You're actually getting programmed. So be really aware of what comes in and what the basis of the energy is. If it's fear-based, you're creating more fear in your experience based on your intake. So apply this principle to everything in your life. If you have people in your life that are constantly naysayers, maybe you don't want to spend as much time with them. Maybe if you have to spend time with them, you don't want to share your projects or dreams or things you're working on with them. That you want to be more discerning with how you use your energy around people that are representing this force that is the fear force. A way that you can input lots of faith into your field is to listen to inspiring things. Listen to stories about miracles. Listen to stories about heroes and intuition that resulted in wonderful things. The more you read about miracles, the more likely your life is going to become one miracle after another. This fosters the faith. These are the kind of things you want to take into your body. Foods that have been grown with consciousness and reverence, that have been gathered, harvested, and cooked with consciousness and reverence, are going to put consciousness and reverence into your space, and gratitude. So winning the battle of faith and fear doesn't usually happen overnight, and maybe it doesn't happen ever, but the better footing you have, the more you strengthen your faith, and the more you limit the fear, the more you're going to create peace in your personal experience, in your relationships, in your community, and in your world. You can see more about my work and my offerings at aspiritualspark.com, or click on the link below this video. And I hope that you win your battle, and that you facilitate the world winning this battle and having peace in our time. Take care.